All right, everyone, in this video we're going to be going over the layout for the front or rear wall, for the knee wall for the modules. In this drawing, I've already done the markings on the drawing for the top and bottom plate on the paper, and I've got all my stuff set up. So I've got my top and bottom plate cut to size, and this time it's 7 foot 5 inches. I've got my two boards, my top plate, my bottom plate. I've got clamps. I've even got a third clamp for a reason I'll show you in just a second. I've got a tape measure, speed square, and pencil. All right, so first step is always to clamp your boards together. So over on this side, I'm going to make sure that they're flush on the end, and then I'm gonna clamp it from underneath. All right. I always clamp it a little bit in from the end. All right, that way if I have a stud at the end, I can have space for that. And you'll notice, then I come over to the other end, I'm gonna clamp it. You notice over here, these boards are a little bit warped, a little bit kind of bent a little bit. So I do, kind of make sure that they are level. So I push up on the board to make sure that it's level right before I clamp it. All right. I do have a third clamp just in case I need it. So in the middle here, this isn't actually too bad. So I might actually just keep it this way. But if you needed to, you could get an extra piece of wood and kind of, clamp this down so it's level. This isn't too bad, so I'm probably just gonna leave that alone. All right, so I just wanted to show that to you. Obviously, we do want the best boards possible. This is kind of some leftover wood from last year, but when you're working on some of these walls, you definitely want to grab the best, straightest boards for your top and bottom plate. Sometimes you don't have an option, especially working with like 16 footers, and we only get a handful of those, so you got to work with what you have. All right. This wall is pretty straightforward. It's only studs. So I have to place that first stud at 1 foot 3 1/4 in from the left edge. And then from there, all the left edges are just straight across 1 foot 1 foot 4, so 16 inches is what I meant to say. 16 inches or 1 foot 4, except for that last stud, which is at the end of the board. All right, so if you come around here, we'll go ahead and get ourselves started. The first stud, right? Studs are 2 by 4, which means they're really 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So I measure in 1.5 inches. I put a tick mark. That's the right edge of this stud here. All right, as you see, I need to reclamp because my clamp is a little too close to the edge. The important thing is if you ever unclamp, just make sure it comes back nice and flush on the end. All right, so now I can mark that. A nice dark straight line, thin straight line all the way across. Mark an X for a stud. Then from that left edge, I'm measuring in 1 foot 3 1/4 inches. That's 15 1/4 inches. Mark that right here. That's the left edge of that stud. All right, and then from there, you see, except for the last stud, every other stud is 1 foot 4 inches, 16 inches on over. All right, so what I do here is I put the end of the tape measure on that tick mark. If you need to, you have someone hold it, and you just stretch the tape measure all the way out across the board, lock it down, and again, assuming this stays here, which you just come back and check, then every 16 inches is marked for you in that red box. That's why carpenters use these tape measures like this. All right, and then you just put a tick mark at every 16 inches. Every time you see one of these red boxes, you put a tick mark. All right, 16, 32, 48, 64, and after 64, I'd run off the board. All right, so that's it. That's the left edge of all my boards. Now I go back to the speed square. At that tick mark, I put that left edge there, and I again draw a straight line, thin straight line all the way across. And then the speed square has a ruler on the bottom. Studs are 1.5 inches, so I mark 1.5 inches. I go back here, I put a tick mark at 1.5 inches. Slide the speed square over, draw the right edge of my stud. Put an X for stud. Slide the speed square over, find that next left edge, put in my thin straight line, put a tick mark at 1.5 inches. Slide the speed square over, X for stud, find the next one, just keep going, repeat this process all the way across the board. Right, even if it's a kind of chewed up piece, you can still do a nice thin straight line all the way across. Oops, almost forgot. Mark my 1.5 inches. Slide the speed square over. X for stud. Slide it on over. All right, I'm at my, almost missed this one. All right, left edge, 1.5 inches for the right edge, slide it over. All right, I got my last one here. One thing you can do is if you do run out of space here, rather than reclamping it, I could just flip my speed square. I can put the left edge in, and then this, you can kind of do this backwards a little bit, put the inside edge of the speed square, the 1.5 inches there, and then just do that straight right there. All right, and then the very last thing I need to do is I need to put my last stud here. The clamp is in the way, so I will unclamp and reclamp. All right, so I'm gonna grab that tape measure one more time. Measure in my 1.5 inches. And then draw my left edge of that stud all the way across. X. All right, and then the last thing you need to do is just get the teacher. The teacher will check all the measurements, all the marks, make sure everything's correct. Once you are correct, they will sign off on the board in Sharpie to know that you've been approved to actually go to construction. If you have any questions, check with the teacher. Thank you.